It was a chilly winter evening, the kind where the wind cuts straight through your coat and makes your teeth chatter. Mark, a busy young professional, hurried down the crowded city streets, phone in one hand, briefcase in the other. His mind was consumed with reports, meetings, and deadlines. As he passed a dimly lit corner near the subway station, he noticed a man huddled in rags, shivering against a rusted lamp post. His clothes were torn, and his face was covered in layers of grime, but his eyes glimmered with a kind of quiet desperation. "Hey, spare some change," the homeless man asked weakly, his voice barely audible over the city's roar. Mark instinctively looked away. "Sorry, I don't have any cash," he muttered, forcing a tight smile and quickening his pace. He didn't even glance back. He told himself that he was late for an important dinner and that it wasn't his responsibility. But deep down, a tiny pang of guilt gnawed at him. As he entered the warmth of his apartment building, he tried to shake off the encounter. He was a busy man, he reminded himself, there was no room for distraction. But that night, Mark couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the man's pale, cold face, the pleading in his eyes. It was a face that screamed for kindness, for someone to care. The next morning, Mark left for work, convinced he had seen nothing more than a figure on the street. Yet, all day, he found himself distracted. In a meeting, he doodled the man's outline on a notepad. On the subway, he imagined the man shivering alone in the cold. He kept telling himself he had responsibilities, bills to pay, a life to live, but the image persisted. Days turned into weeks, and Mark continued his routine, walking past the same corner every day, ignoring the man as he begged quietly for food or a coin. Each time he passed, the man would nod weakly, not asking for much, just hoping for a glance of acknowledgement. Then one evening, something unusual happened. As Mark hurried down the street, he saw the man being pushed to the ground by a drunken passerby. Something inside Mark snapped. Without thinking, he rushed forward, helping the man to his feet, dusting off his torn coat. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. The man looked at him with a faint, grateful smile. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the street noise. That night, Mark lay in bed, replaying the moment over and over. He had finally done the right thing, or had he? The man had smiled at him, yes, but Mark couldn't shake the feeling that he had been too late, too blind for too long. He resolved to make a change, to do something meaningful. Tomorrow, he would buy the man a warm meal, maybe even offer him a job at the cafe he occasionally managed for a friend. But life, Mark soon realized, has a strange way of teaching lessons when we least expect them. And Mark was about to learn one of the hardest lessons of his life. Before we dive into Chapter 2, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Goodness Corner for more heart-touching stories that remind us why kindness matters. You won't want to miss what happens next. It had been 2 weeks since Mark had finally stopped ignoring the homeless man. In that time, he had started bringing him sandwiches and hot coffee every morning, slowly learning his name, Tom. Tom was quiet, polite, and surprisingly wise for someone who had lived on the streets for years. Their brief conversations became the highlight of Mark's day, though he still couldn't fully erase the guilt of all the times he had walked past. Then, one morning, everything changed. Mark woke to the sound of a luxurious car horn outside his modest apartment. He opened the door to find a well-dressed man standing there, wearing a tailored suit, sunglasses, and an expression that radiated power. "Mr. Mark Jensen?" the man asked. "Yes, that's me," Mark replied, confused. "Can I help you?" The man smiled faintly and handed Mark a business card. "I'm Richard Alden. I own Alden Enterprises. I'm here about Tom." Mark's heart skipped a beat. "Tom? The homeless man?" Richard nodded. "Yes. Tom Alden is my uncle. I've been searching for him for months. He told me he met a kind man named Mark who offered him food and warmth. I wanted to meet the man who showed him humanity when no one else would." Mark's mind reeled. "Your uncle," he's Tom. Richard nodded again, a small smile playing at his lips. Yes. And because of you, he's safe and well fed. I want to repay your kindness. Mark laughed nervously, shaking his head. I didn't do anything special. I didn't ignore him that time. Richard's expression softened. Exactly. Most people did. But you didn't. That makes you extraordinary. Before Mark could respond, Richard handed him an envelope. Inside was a check, one that could change his life forever. But it wasn't just the money that moved Mark. It was the lesson, the realization that even the smallest acts of compassion could ripple out in ways he never imagined. Over the next few weeks, Mark and Tom grew even closer. Tom, now safe and housed, shared his stories of struggle and resilience. Mark realized that life wasn't just about chasing deadlines or climbing the corporate ladder, it was about noticing the people around you, showing kindness when it was least expected. One evening, as Mark sat on his apartment balcony, he thought back to that cold winter night when he had ignored Tom. He could hardly believe how life had turned around. A simple gesture of kindness had brought him not just fortune, but a deeper understanding of humanity. And in that quiet reflection, Mark made a promise to himself: he would never ignore someone in need again. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Goodness Corner for more real-life stories.